Hello.
Hello. We
Yes,
good now?
yes, yes,
You
yes.
froze last.
Thank you very much. Right.
Okay.
So for me to start this session, let me first do a small background um, overview of your history, and then from there we'll pick up. We'll talk about your some of your works that you've done in the past, your inspiration, and then we'll look into the future of how the industry for film and live action TV has changed over the years, and possibly some of your predictions for the future of how the industry is going to change post COVID-19 and that sort of things, and possibly a bit of advice you can give some of our local um, people down here, right? Um, Sounds good.
You're freezing again.
Let me change my internet network.
Okay, you froze just the last part there. I didn't hear quite the last part.
All right.
Is mine coming up?
So I was saying that we'll end with your prediction for a post-COVID-19
Okay.
scenario for live action TV production and into the future for how the industry is going to develop, right? So
Okay.
You were the co-founder of Landmark Entertainment Group, and in
Yes.
2002, you left Landmark Entertainment Group to form Gary Goddard Entertainment, GGE,
Yes.
known as the Goddard Group.
Yes.
And it was an entertainment design firm in North Hollywood, Los Angeles, California, right?
Yes.
You reorganized and changed ownership again in 2018 to Legacy Entertainment.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, and so your field of influence or your sphere of work spanned from theater production, where you produced several Broadway shows, including the 2009 revival of Hair,
Yes.
Labute's Reasons to Be Pretty,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Jekyll and Hyde, Jesus Christ, the Superstar, The Wiz at Anchorest, among others. He also created several television shows, including Captain Power and Soldiers of the Future, Mega Babies, and Skeleton Warriors.
Yes. Correct.
Right. So another key part of this was Masters He-Man and Masters of the Universe, because I grew up watching such content like He-Man and Masters of the Universe. Now, did you direct the He-Man Masters of and the Universe series, or did you write the series and then get to direct it?
No, I did the feature film, the live action feature film, not the animated one, the live action feature film.
Okay, great. So because there are several, how will I put it? There's several, if you look at the animation and you look at the live action film, there are so many places that the animation is not in sync with the live action film in terms of characters that were featured, in terms of even storyline that was being told and that sort of thing. So I needed to get that cleared for
Yes.
students and that sort of thing. So also, from research, I found that you worked with Disney for a while, right?
Yes.
I created theme parks. And then from there, so what I'm trying to map out here is that did you join Disney to create theme parks first, and then you got called on to help direct He-Man and Captain Power?
Well, actually, I was hired. I was hired by Disney first, right? I went to California Institute of the Arts, which is the school that Walt Disney, when he passed away, he left $40 million of his estate to build California Institute of the Arts.
Okay.
So I went from high school to Cal Arts. I was in the first graduating class of Cal Arts.
Wow.
And right after I got out of Cal Arts, actually right before I got out of Cal Arts, I was offered a job at Walt Disney World in Florida. Cal Arts is in California, and I grew up in California.
Yeah.
And it was to co-direct this dinner show in Walt Disney World called Hoop-de-Doo, the Wild West Dinner Show.
Yeah, I did.
So I literally, I graduated from Cal Arts, and 2 weeks later I was in Florida directing the show with Larry Billman, the man who wrote it. And then after being at Disney World about a year and a half, I was offered a position back at Imagineering in California. And that's how I got to Imagineering. But my background, when I was in high school, I wrote my own musicals and staged them and directed them. I made movies in high school, my own little movies. And so I have always had an interest in stage, movies, TV, and theme parks, all of it. So, so I would say the Imagineering came first, and then I left Disney and formed my own company. And I did a show, a live show at Universal Studios based on Conan, the movie Conan. We created this spectacular show. And that show was seen by Ed Pressman, who had the rights to He-Man, the movie.
Okay.
And based on that, he offered me the role to come and direct this movie. He had already had a script written, and the script already, for budget reasons, was this concept, a fish out of water story where He-Man would come to Earth to, in contemporary times.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to direct the movie, and in terms of the mythic elements of Eternia, I actually rewrote the script with the writers, and I did a draft or two without the writers. But what my biggest contribution was, I think, is the movie originally started on Earth with the Courtney Cox character banging at her door, and as she opens it, a warrior, He-Man, collapses and says, "I need your help." So it almost all takes place on Earth. I came up with the idea of the bookends to at least have Eternia in the opening and the closing, in the big throne room and out in the battlefield and Grayskull and all that stuff. So I tried to bring as much of Eternia back into the movie as I could within the concept of it happens on Earth. So that's kind of that's the sequence of events up to that point.
All right. So there's this thing in storytelling, right? Especially with created worlds and concepts called world building, right? I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's being
Very
used,
familiar.
it's being used in Star Wars, in Game of Thrones, in Lord of the Rings, and that sort of thing. Did you use such concepts to employ to tell the story of He-Man and to tell the story of Captain Power at that time? Or was world building a very, very in thing in the industry?
Yeah, I don't think people called it that then, but yeah, that term is very familiar now. World building is something that is part of like every mythology now, from the Avengers to Black Panther. But the world building with Black Panther really started with Jack Kirby way back. I mean, I was reading those comics when I was a kid, and he was, Stan Lee gets all the credit, but actually, and I knew Stan and I knew Jack very well because I knew him from the time I was a kid, and Jack does not get enough credit. He was really the visionary. He's the guy who created those worlds, and then it is true, Stan put words to them, but the whole concept of the Black Panther and Wakanda, and going to Africa and thinking it's a primitive village, and then finding out it's this incredible, the most contemporary, futuristic, world ever. That's all from Jack Kirby. Jack was quite a genius, and so they were world building back then when nobody called it that. They were just telling really good stories, So, and from my perspective, yes, I think we did world building with Skeleton Warriors, the animated show, with Captain Power, even with Masters of the Universe. By bringing Eternia back in, we were trying to give a sense of this world of Eternia, not just Earth. And I think that world building is part of whatever we do, even when we're creating resort hotels in Macau. If you look at the galaxy, the whole idea was it was an Asian palace that was rising out of this kind of beautiful paradise of water and plants and stuff and everything. So there's a whole backstory to that as well. I think when you're designing, you're creating, whatever it is, unless you're doing a true life story, you're always building some kind of world, that things, language of the costumes and of the settings and everything. Even that throne room, all of those statues, those were the great figures of Eternian history. the great writer, the great scientist, the great inventor, the great engineer, the great warrior. That's what those statues are, you know.
Yeah.
So everything in our world of Eternia had meaning.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot of going back to the Captain Power universe and going back to to the Masters of the Universe as well. There were a lot of partnership deals, or in this essence, publishing deals that were done with Mattel and Co. Right? And also,
Yes.
I also know for the Captain Power there were several other um, um, experiences planned in games, in comics, and also in toys, right? For season 1 and season 2. Now, how does one go about, or how best can a talent who's coming into the industry, who doesn't know how to structure these partnership deals, how best is it for them to structure this to help get their story from script to TV?
The first answer is write a great script. Because whether you write a great script as a movie or as a TV show,
Yeah.
if it's really great, someone will discover it and will help that writer move it forward. But it has to really be great. And it depends. Great for comedy is different than for drama, and that's different than fantasy. So, you have all the different genres, and each one's different. Captain Power, I created the concept of Captain Power to create, my idea back then was to bring live action shows back to kids TV, because everything was animated then. But when I grew up, there were both. There were cartoon shows, there were live action shows. There was Sky King, about a guy who flew in a plane. There was a Circus Boy. There was Fury, the story of a horse and a boy who loved him. There were live action shows, Zorro, The Lone Ranger. So I grew up seeing live action kids shows and cartoon shows. And by that time, everything, Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles and He-Man, and everything was cartoons. And I went to Mattel and said, I have an idea for a futuristic warrior. And I said, think of G.I. Joe meets Flash Gordon. Think of warriors of the future. And I presented Captain Powers and the soldiers of the future. And they loved it. I just wanted to do a really great show that I think kids would love. They had interactive technology that they didn't know what to do with, and they thought, hey, this is the right thing. So I think I went in with the right idea at the right time. Mattel was looking for something. I was looking to do a TV show, and it all came together. So you never know how these things are going to happen. Yeah. But the concept was strong, and the character was strong. I trademarked the name Captain Power before I went in, because I've gone into pitch ideas before I was young, and I go and pitch ideas, and they'd say, no, thanks. And then I'd see something I pitched later. So this time we went into Mattel, we trademarked the name, and someone actually brought it up in a meeting. They said, how do you know that name Captain Power is available? It seems very familiar to me. And I said, well, you'll be happy to know we've trademarked it, which ended the conversation. They were like, oh, okay. So it is good to protect yourself. The way you protect yourself, if you write a script, I'm sure you probably know this, but I don't know if your students do or not. You can register your script with the Writers Guild of America, whether you're a member or not. You can use their registration services. It costs a little bit of money, but it's worth it. You have it registered, right? In the case of, if you're going to go to a toy company and you go with a great idea, you better have a trademark on it or a copyright on it before you go in. Otherwise, they could borrow the idea from you. For instance, I had already pitched them an idea for another thing called the Peanut Butter Papers, and in there I had the Crystal Castle. But when I went in that time, which was about a year before Captain Power, I didn't have any of that trademarked or copywritten. I was just pitching them these things. And a year later, She-Ra comes out with the Crystal Castle. And I went to Mattel, I said, hey, I pitched you guys the Crystal Castle and the Peanut Butter Papers, and now it's, oh, well, we already had the same idea, it was I don't believe them. I think they stole that idea, but since I was now in business with them on other things, I didn't want to, make a big issue of it. I just let it go.
So copyright goes a long way in helping protecting IP ideas and that sort of thing. Yes. So just you mentioned. Let's go back to the American Writers Association, right? You mentioned that if someone is even is not registered with them, you can register your own script and help get copyright. Does that now? I don't know. Some sort of these organizations do have territory they cover and that sort of thing. They may say they are only for North American content and that sort of thing. Now in the African area, can any African register with the American Writers Association as well?
For registration, yes. I'm not sure about copyrights, but probably the same. But for registration, I believe anyone can register. Now, registration is different than copyright. Registration is the Writers Guild. You will send your script to them, and you'll fill out the forms online, and they will, upon the payment of the fee and a receipt of the thing, they will register your script. That means there is a date upon which the Writers Guild confirms that you submitted a script under the title of, whatever. And they will, and you'll have that. So now you have a proof of date with the Writers Guild that you submitted a script for a TV show or a television pilot or whatever on that date, and that's confirmed. So now at least if someone steals your idea, you can go back and say, no, wait a minute, I registered this with the Guild, that the Guild had this on this date, and you have proof. Copyright is actually much simpler, at least in terms of North American rules. I'm not sure what Africa is, you'll have to check, but it's probably the same. The copyright is from the moment that you write something and create it, as long as you write copyright, the year, and then your name or your company, copyright 2020, Gary Goddard. That means it is Copyright Office, and you get a registration of the copyright, which is a second level of ensuring that copyright exists. Now, the other cheap way you can do it, you can mail yourself your script. You put the script in with the date on it, with the copyright card, right?
Yeah.
You put that in a envelope. You seal it. You send it registered mail to yourself. The mail comes back registered with dates on it. You do not open it. You only did this for one reason. If anyone ever tries to steal that script, you bring that to the court. You bring that registered mail sealed with the copyright notice of your script in that. But at least in North America, that's legal. They would open that up in the court, and they would see that 3 years ago you sent that to yourself, registered mail through the post office. It's dated, it's sealed, and it hasn't been opened since then. That's the cheap way to do it.
All right. So let's, based on your experience, right, for writers and directors, how best would you say, from the point of financing, especially with your experience with Mattel, from the point of financing and storytelling, who has the best leverage to tell the story in terms of the direction of the story? Does that fall solely on the director, or sometimes the financiers get to push where the story is going to?
Well, everything's different. In our case, it was a different time then, but Mattel pretty much trusted us. They were financing the show, the Captain Power show, and they pretty much trusted us creatively as long as we didn't, there couldn't it was a toy company, so they didn't want any blood. They didn't even want any action fights. Were okay, but nothing violent. You're not gonna see someone get their head cut off or something like that, right? And our show actually was it was really aimed at it. I use the Walt Disney so we were not writing down to kids, we were writing up, and Okay, we're back.
Yes, we're back. Internet connection down here is choppy sometimes and steady some days.
Right.
Just to do a recap, again, we're talking about how best to tell the story either from the financier's point of view or from the director's point of view. It's really going down to your experience with Mattel and every other publisher that you had to deal with. Did you feel that the financiers have a better control over the content telling, storytelling, or the directors?
Every case is different. Television is more of a producer's medium, and directors are seen more as a person who, because producers develop the scripts, they work with the writers, they have the overall vision, they kind of create the whole arc of the show, and then they bring in directors to put it up. Now, the first director does the pilot. He has more input than any of the other directors that follow, because the director that does the pilot is involved in the casting, doing the first show, setting the tone, setting the look of the show, setting the feel of the show. So that director has a lot of input. But if you're hired as a writer or director after that, it's a producer's medium, and you're working with the producer, and you have to follow the arc of the show that's been set up by the original, show creator, who's usually a writer, the showrunner / writer. So that's television. In motion pictures, the director has a lot more, of course, of the input on everything, from the design, from the world building, working with the writers, hiring writers, firing writers, until he shapes his vision. But make no mistake, the financing side always has input to some degree. Each case is individual, and generally what happens is the most famous directors still have to listen to the finance people, but they have a lot of sway.
Yeah.
The other one is the low budget projects. When you're a starting out director or writer and it's not costing a lot of money, it's a low budget thing, sometimes you get a lot more freedom because no one's really watching that one so much. It's like, okay, well, that's not very much money, so just let them do their thing and let them get it done. It's everyone in between. It's everyone in between gets a lot of input from the money side, depending upon who it is, depending upon the relationship. So it's really up to you, each of the individual writer, director, all of your team, when they go out, it's whatever kind of relationship you can establish with the finance people. And you should try and establish a good working relationship and be respectful of them so they'll trust you and try and support you. Remember, ultimately, the financial people, they can fire you too. It's rare, but if you really get crazy, they'll go, you're out. We're going to replace you with someone else. So it's finding your own way through that and trying to establish a good working relationship and establish. Are you back? Okay, there you are.
Right, can you hear me?
It keeps freezing. Can you?
Yeah, it does. We're back.
Okay, are we back? Are you there?
Yes. So let me just move on to the next question because of time.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You're back. It's hard to. It's a little fuzzy to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
So let me just move on to the next question, right? Now, with the rise to popularity of Captain Power, right? After it debuted on TV in 1987, there was some um, viewers' feedback that said it introduced bad, bad views for children because the show was associated with murder of robots and that sort of thing, right? Looking back at how the industry has grown over time, right? Would you say that the PR perspective of the show wasn't really managed, especially if you look at the recent case of Brie Larson and Avengers and so many other titles after um, the Captain Power franchise debuted?
Well, I think that yeah, of course we got flack, but you're always going to have some kind of controversy on things with a certain group of people. Um, no one wanted to listen to it. We designed the show when they wanted to add this interactive element. They wanted to have kids with guns firing at the screen. Well, we designed it so you weren't firing a gun. You were flying a jet, and the jet was firing. And secondly, you had to always fight on the side of Captain Power against the robots,
Yeah.
not people. So we tried to design in that you could only fire at the robots and get points for the robots. So you were never actually killing anything that was living. In fact, you were doing what Captain Power did. You were living by his creed, life matters, and you always were to protect life and only fight against the biodreads, which were robotic creatures who were designed to end all life. So we built that into the show, but for the anti-gun people, that still wasn't enough. They never wanted to listen to us and everything. But I guess in the end of the day, the show lived on. The show has many fans around the world. Kids that grew up with it remember it fondly. So I feel good about that. And I think everyone that watched the show got the message. They understood it. Life was important. Life, everything was about protecting life.
Yeah.
So
going into the future now, there has been several reboots of Captain Power or the He-Man, the Masters of the Universe franchise that has been touted all over the internet. Through my research, I found that Netflix has actually come out to say Masters of the Universe will be reproduced for 2021, which is next year. Is there any updates on that for viewers around the world, for students, and also for Captain Power as well? Any future updates? I did see something on Phoenix Rising on the internet, but no further updates on that.
Yes, well, on Masters of the Universe, the animated show is definitely coming to Netflix, and that looks fantastic. It looks, I don't know, because we won't know until we see it, but from what I've seen so far, they've done what I wanted to do. If we ever made the sequel, I was hoping the sequel to the live action movie would be on Eternia. And I always thought Eternia should be this vibrant world on a par with like Lord of the Rings, real world building. And I always thought the unique thing of Masters of the Universe was the combination of sword and sorcery with high tech. Even the animated show, they had the ships that would fly around and stuff like that, but they also had the ancient castle and they had swords, and so it was a combination, I thought, of both. And I thought that was the unique thing that is unlike any other, or at least at the time was unlike any other concept. So I think the animated show looks like they're really trying to world building and create it in a place that looks like it's a fantastic world of its own. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that. The live action remakes have always been troubled. There have been 8 or 10 or 12 tries, different directors, different writers, they in and out, and then none of them seems to work out. So we'll see if there's going to be an actual sequel to the live action film. Many have tried and many have failed. So we'll see. Captain Power, yes, I think Captain Power may be coming back. I really can't talk about it right now because it's all in discussions. But I think more than ever, it does look like it may come back as a series, and with high production values, which is important to me, and with an emphasis on the story and on the characters. So So yes, I think maybe sometime in the near future, I will be able to talk about it more. But right now, I can't, except to say that yes, discussions are ongoing and it looks very good. It looks very promising.
All right. Would you be looking for some sort of African content around the storytelling for Captain Power for the new movie?
You went out. You went out right before storytelling for Captain Power.
I said, will you be looking for any African content to be part of the new storytelling for Captain Power?
I don't know yet because we haven't really sat down to look at the story aspects. Although I will tell you that the second phase, the second set of scripts that we wrote for the original Captain Power,
Yeah.
it was not specifically Africa, but if you remember at the end of season 1, their power base was destroyed by Lord Dredd, and they do wind up on the run.
Yeah.
And if we got to the second season, the whole second season takes place in a jungle where Captain Power and his men create a new hideaway in this jungle, and they meet this race of people that are archers, and so while we did not say that was Africa, it was a jungle-like race, and they were archers, and they were very adept at living within the jungle, hidden from the eyes of Lord Dredd, and that is where Captain Power and his remaining members regenerate their forces. Well, because they have to re-strengthen themselves after the power base was destroyed. So whether that is a part of this new retelling, I don't know, because that's down the road. But there's no question that the story is a global story. It's not just
Exactly.
not located in one place. So
yeah. So there's something that really bothered me when I watched those Captain Power's episodes back then. The suits for Captain Power and his soldiers. How was that created? Is it the same process of using carbon fiber today as is being used across the industry to create Comic Con suits related and that sort of thing? Did you use carbon fiber or any other sort of material? And if you can share those sort of materials with people down here.
you mean for the actual costumes for the show, or you mean in terms of the story concept?
No, the initial costumes for the show, or what's the show actually finally adopted for the costumes?
Well, that was in the 80s. That was pre-digital, and so no, everything was done in the old-fashioned way. All the armor was sculpted out of sculpted material and clay, and then a fiberglass shell was made. Everything was made out of fiberglass and then painted to look real. So that was, we were doing that show, we were doing a high-tech futuristic show with very old-school technology because that's all that existed at the time.
Okay.
Today we would probably do it different.
All right. So the live-action post-production process has changed over time because of technology, and is there any trend that has changed from your own perspective from how you produce Captain Power back in the days to now, especially on other sort of serialized content for TV? Would you like to share those sorts of changes?
Well, back then, no one had done a weekly series with digital animation superimposed into live action. It was real state of the art. I mean, now the good news is by today's standards, it's no big deal. Today we're going to be able to do it so much better and it'll be so much more fantastic. All of the world building. But back then we had to use miniatures. Volcania is a miniature, and a lot of what you saw of the battleground stuff, those were big miniatures that would fill a room and the camera would move across it, much like the original Star Wars movies. The only digital were the actual biodreads, and we had to shoot the plates for the live action, for the battles, for all those scenes with Lord Dredd when he's talking to Silveron or whoever. And to do that on a weekly basis back then, to churn out, we had a contract with the digital animation company. I think they had to do, I can't remember if it was 90 seconds or 3 minutes. I think it was 90 seconds a week. And that was almost impossible for them to do, but they did it. They pulled it off. We did it. We got it done. Today, the digital thing is so much easier and so much more high quality, and the processing power is just, back in those days they needed a gigantic refrigerated room of computers to generate the kind of animation that was required to make that weekly schedule, and it was always right down to the last minute, and getting that to the editors and getting it to comp in and doing the comps and everything else. It was pretty crazy, actually. But today, we'll be able to do much higher quality work and much more of it, and on a timely basis, because now the digital tools are phenomenal. So the difference from then to today is day and night. It's incredible, So I think, yeah, it'll be a much higher level of quality, a much higher level of, I think what we did was high quality for the time. And when I look back, it's actually pretty amazing that we even pulled it off. But today we have so much more capabilities now. Everything will be on a much grander scale.
All right, great. What sort of advice would you give out to future writers and future students for film and live action TV content?
I would say write a great story. A great story has to have great characters and great arcs, and great writing will always be the best way in. The other way into directing is either writing or editing. If you become an editor, you really understand how things move and how things pace and how things go together, which is a good training ground for a director as well. I think that at the end of the day, if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. So the fact is, the best way in is to write a piece that everyone wants. If you can write a piece that everyone wants, that's your ticket in, and then you just build from there.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Gary, for your time. Thank you for this session. Hopefully in future we'll still get back in touch with you for maybe some more advice, or for maybe future partnership working with Captain Power, or whatever the future brings.
Yeah, one thing I would recommend for all of you there to read, there's a new fantasy book out. It's called Rage of Dragons.
Okay.
Rage of Dragons. And it's written by a first-time writer. He's Black.
Yeah.
I believe he was born in South Africa but raised in London. Okay. But the unique thing is it's an epic fantasy story. And the difference is, this writer who grew up reading all the same, I've read all these, I read a lot, I read all the fantasy epic stories. And he read all the same ones. And he has a son now, and he said, he wanted to read a story where the characters in the story were like him, were Black. And so he wrote this story. So there's 3 warring civilizations. It's swords, it's dragons, it's magic, and it's an incredible story. But all of the civilizations, and by the way, when I got the book, I read the first few pages. That's what I do. I go in a bookstore and I read the first few pages. If the writer intrigues me, I buy the book and take it home. I read that book in 4 days, and I was halfway through it, not halfway through. I was probably in the first 10 or 12 pages, and I started realizing, because I didn't realize when I bought it, but this character was bronze skin. This one had dark skin. This one was, and I suddenly went, and you know how when you read a book, you see the characters you had. I wasn't seeing them as Black. I was seeing them as like a normal, sword and sorcery kind of book. But then I started realizing bronze. So I went back and reread the characters again. And then I realized, wow, okay. And then I read the book and understood everything. And it changes the way you see it, because now all of your mental images instead of being kind of how we always think of these stories, kind of medieval, Gothic, castles and stuff. Now I'm starting to see everything with more of an African. I'm seeing the castles or the buildings or the structures, the costumes, more in all this. So all I can tell you is, as a white person, incredible world building, incredible story. All of the characters, all of the tribes, all of the of a more of an African. Unbelievable how he sets this all up. So if your students want to read a book that I think will inspire them and all about the things we discussed, world building, Dragons book, that it is a fantastic story.
All right. All right. Thank you.
You froze again. Are you there?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your
Can you
time.
hear me?
Yeah, yeah. I can hear you.
I think it's frozen again, but hopefully you got all that.
Yeah, I can. The audio is still coming through. Can you hear? Can you hear?
There, okay. So did you get all that, the last part?
Not really, but just the last 2 or 3 lines.
Are you there?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Still
me?
frozen, I think.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now. I turned off the video. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So I'm saying the last two, 3 lines, if you could go over that again. Where you were talking about how
Okay, you're back, looks like.
how it relates to different colors around the world, different sort of people around the world.
The book, The Rage of Dragons?
Yes.
Yeah, a fantastic book. And I think your students will be inspired by it. Great writing, great character building, great world building, great action sequences, how it all ties together, the story arc. But the fact that all of the characters are Black and have their own internal, of course, they're warring with each other as well, you know, but it's quite fantastic. And the lead characters are all well drawn, well delineated, good dialogue. I think. Let me say this: if I was a young Black person and I read that story when I was in high school or college or whatever, I would have been hugely inspired. So I'm a great fan. Even though this is his first book, I'm a great fan of this writer, and I think he's up and coming. And I believe this will get made. I believe this will get made into a movie. It's that good.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much once again for your time.
You're frozen.
Is it that bad? Is it moving now?
Okay.
I was saying thank you very much for your time. We'll definitely get back in touch with you. We'll keep writing and getting more of your experience to help our students down here. And I'll try and look up on Jack Kirby and see if I can get a hold of Jack Kirby and ask for his own.
Jack Kirby has passed away, and so has Stan Lee. They're both gone now, but you should definitely see his work.
All right. All right.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much then.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.